Eventide is well known for making some of the most revolutionary effects boxes in the history of recording. With their new Split EQ, they aim to continue with that tradition. This EQ is using Eventide's new patented structural split technology. And what this essentially does is takes an incoming audio signal and splits it into two signals, transient and tonal. And with these two signals, you can then independently EQ and pan them. So in today's video, we'll do a short tutorial on how the plugin works and then go over some audio examples so you can hear the plugin in action. Before we do get started, check the links below if you're interested in my mixing and mastering services, or if you'd like to join my Patreon, where we have live classes and more in-depth tutorials on my process. Let's go. All right, guys, so here is the Split EQ, and at first glance, it looks like a 6-band parametric EQ with a low pass and a high pass. However, obviously, as we know, it's a lot more than that. And when you go to some of the frequencies, you'll see that there's two different colors. And the blue is your tonal, and the green is your transient. So, if you guys know anything about transient designers, you have like sustain and attack or whatever, they all say it in different ways, kind of like that concept, except you can change it in an EQ form, which is really quite special and sounds even better. So besides that, the only part to really look at is down here at the bottom, right? So you have your EQ, you also have pan, which is actually something pretty special. And as you can see here, you can pan the transients to the right, at the left, and pan the tonal to the right. And that's pretty magical. And you'll hear it on one of the guitar examples we got, where you can kind of pan things to get the transients out of the way for the vocal and have the tone still there, but you'll get the idea. So you can do that. You can also switch it to mid-side, which is pretty impressive. After that, you get to the split section. So that's kind of the determining factor of what this thing does. As Eventide says, a lot of this stuff is under the hood, but there are a few parameters that you can tweak as you move on. What I found is just going to your source and picking whatever instrument it is. For instance, here we're going to work on the kick. That kind of changes things under the hood so that they work for that kind of instrument. But just so you know what these things do, there's transient separation, which affects the isolation level for transients across the spectrum. So at higher values, transient regions will be smaller and have sharper boundaries in terms of time and frequency. Reading this from the manual, as I'm sure you can tell. The transient decay increases the release time of the transient region, resulting in longer transient areas and slower tonal attacks, okay? And then smoothing does what you would think. It controls the speed of the decision-making process, right? So, if maybe it's moving too fast, the transients are getting a little too crazy, you could tone it back a bit with the smoothing. And then lastly here, you have this little headphone icon. And what that does is you can click green if you just want to hear the transients, or click blue if you just want to hear the tonal. So that's a good way to kind of get started, is listen to these before you start doing any EQ. And then if you want to change some of the separation and decay, you can do that then by soloing in on what the process is actually doing. From my experience using this plugin, I found just picking the source is more than enough and really gets you to the goal you're trying to achieve. So enough yip yap, let's get to some examples. We're gonna check out this kick from the song Heavyweights by my buddy Trip Carter. You can check him out on Spotify. And I'm just gonna play the kick first without anything on it. I have some of the plugins I use in the original mix muted. But let me just solo this and you can hear what this kick sounds like. So as you can hear, this kick was given to me with a ton of reverb on it. Not always great for when you want to, compress something or EQ it because you bring out the kick. So a lot of times I use this deverb from SPL. Don't need to use that anymore. You can just go here, right? Grab your tonal, which is the blue, and I just went boop and took out, you'll hear, I'm going to take out not all of it, but a lot of the reverb that we don't want just by using this EQ like that. Watch, check it out. So we got something we can work with now. Now you might say, well, it sounds a little dead now. That's not a problem. We can go here and boost our transients and get some of that punch back that we might have lost with losing some of the reverb. And if you want a little more attack in that 2K, 1K area, we can boost up there too. And then, you know, we might be losing a little bit of that high end that we want, so we can bring it back a bit and not cut it quite so much. And you can hear just in that short time, we were able to pull back the reverb of a kick, boost up the transients on the punch, and a little bit in the mid-range. And to me, it sounds a lot better really fast. All right, so the next example we're gonna go over is using it on a guitar. So let me play this guitar for you guys, and then we'll do some stuff to make it sound a little more fuller. So it sounds cool. There's sometimes that little ringy that we don't necessarily like, and we feel like it could have a little more body to it, right? So one thing you can do is go to the solo here and just click on the transient section. So now we'll just listen to the transients, and we can hear where some of those kind of like sharp rings are that we don't, you know, might not necessarily want. So what you can see is I soloed all the transients, and then I went in and actually soloed the EQ too. So you can really dial in. And if you want, you could just have gone here and soloed just this, and that will solo just the transients of this EQ band. But sometimes it's easier to get going, and then you can be like, okay, what am I looking for? So what we did is we brought this down in what, 5K area, and then let's boost that tonal wise, and maybe watch this, you can widen the Qs out separately, widen the Q bit, and see what that sounds like to maybe give us a little more fullness, but not so much of the kind of annoying part of that guitar. So it's a bit subtle, but not that subtle, where, you know, we got some more fullness in this guitar now, but we've taken out some of the stuff we don't necessarily like. Now, another thing you could do with this is if you go to the EQ Band 5, you see we can pan transients and pan tonals separately. So maybe the vocal, like in this guitar getting in the way, you could always move the transients over a little bit and keep the tonal here. And then the vocal has more room, but you still have your guitar, and you'll hear the transients a little bit more on the right side, but the guitar will still kind of feel where it's supposed to be panned-wise. It also gives you a lot more space with the guitar. Like the guitar sounds bigger now. And you know, you can even do some really cool effects by like panning this all the way there and panning that all the way to the left. And check this out. So you could really get creative with this thing as well, with some of the panning of, you know, putting the transients on one side and the tonal on the other side, and creating space and doing all kinds of stuff. So more than just EQing the tonal and the transients, you can do creative stuff too. All right, guys, so last example we're gonna go over is a vocal. And to me, this is where the money is for this plugin. You can really do a lot of stuff, and we'll go over, you know, one of the examples of something I found that was just game changing for me as far as EQ and vocals. We'll take a listen to this vocal. It sounds good. There's some sibilance and stuff and a little stuff in the high end that I'm not really digging. And I'll show you how we can get rid of that really fast.
Barely hold myself up, you're the antidote. Fix my mental for a little, getting fit.
So you hear the S, and then the fix my is kind of like not great sounding, just the way it was recorded or delivered. And so usually I'll use like a de-esser and maybe Soothe and a few other plugins to fix that. Now you can just go here. So we're just gonna take this EQ, boost up our tonal, and then bring down the transients, right? So we're just kind of doing the opposite on either side. And now take a listen to this.
Barely hold myself up, you're the antidote. Fix my mental for a little, getting physical.
And then before.
Barely hold myself up, you're the antidote. Fix my mental for a little, getting physical.
And then with.
Barely hold myself up, you're the antidote. Fix my mental for a little, getting physical.
It just cleans that vocal up so well, so fast, that it's really pretty impressive. And then you can go in and you know, there's some of the low end stuff that we might not like, If we want to change that a bit, I do wish they would get this Q with a scroll wheel, but maybe in a new update. But you know, if you want to take out that 500 to 200, we can just do that on the tonal side while keeping our transients.
Barely hold myself up, you're the antidote. Fix my mental for a little, getting physical. It's a heavy head I carry, no lie. Barely hold myself up, you're the antidote.
And then, if you need a low cut, boom, put that on there. And we'll take that one together. And that's good to go.
Barely hold myself up, you're the antidote. Fix my mental for a little, getting physical. It's a heavy head I carry, no lie. Barely hold my...
So you can't tell me that's quite a big improvement with this vocal just by doing these few EQ moves using the split EQ. So this is definitely going to start being one of my go-to EQs for cleaning vocals up before I get into, you know, maybe more creative effects and stuff like that. So really great on vocals. So there you have it, guys. That is the split EQ. It's a pretty impressive plugin, some new technology. I'm a big fan of plugin companies coming out with new stuff that makes our jobs easier or makes, you know, a different way of doing things. I kind of feel like the old school, like emulations of 1176s are so old and boring that I'm so excited when, you know, something new comes out that makes doing something a different way easier or better. Let me know what you guys think about the split EQ in the comments below. Please make sure to like this video if it was helpful for you and subscribe so you can always keep up to date with what we got going on in the channel. Talk to you soon.